So now we're going to look at some examples of using semantic HTML to structure documents. And I always think it's a good idea to look at other people's work, to read articles, that kind of a deal, just to get ideas and to be knowledgeable enough yourself to be able to evaluate whether or not somebody is speaking about something validly or not in a valid way. Always, there's that learning edge where you're on the threshold of what you know and what you don't know, because it's a vast field, it's wide, it's deep, and there's a lot to know. But you want to try to make sure you don't go down some rabbit hole learning about the HTML5 outlining algorithm when nobody uses it. So here's an example from, all that to say, here's an example from some other dude, Hong Kiat, wherever that guy's at. I liked his article. And I modified his example just a little bit so it's a little bit more consumable by us. But here we have the body, and the body could have a header and then also a footer. And there's no main in here, which that's cool. But it's got a header and then it has a nav, right? He put his nav outside his header. So this is block level content. That's block level content. So, they're going to be stacked like this. And then like this is next, right? There's going to be stacked on top of each other. But this is heading 1, so this is telling search engines, anybody, this is the most important thing on the page. And then here's an article. And notice how throughout the entire page, this outline is kept with the headings in order of importance. It didn't reset inside the article. It went to H2 because the main thing on the page, the most important, is H1. And now this is H2. This is of secondary importance. It's like an outline at home or some outline you'd put together for a speech. Main point, subpoint, 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 main point, subpoint, 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 right? H1, H2. You could have more than H1, H1. You could have more than one H1. Sounds weird to say. But yeah, so you could have more than one H1 if you want. But this page only has one. So then, article with a header and a footer. And H2, H3s, H3s, H4, right? So that just continuing like what's the order of importance. And aside, and notice we go back to H2 here, right? Kind of like, this chunk of content in this area, right, was H2 started out. Same with this one. And then a footer. So kind of cool just to look at other people's examples and see how are other people using this stuff and what are they doing. And also to see if like, oh, they did that and that goes against what the spec says. All right, so I also put in here the Jurassic Park example from MDN with the film review, which we already talked about and we've looked at a lot and which I really like. I think it's a great example, so I just wanted it to be handy for you. It's right there. And then there's a few more here. So here's like, the body and then a header with a H1. And then a section, H2, H3, H4, 4, 4. And you can see how this is really nailing that H1, H2, H3 heading outline deal. And our section, felines, right? And then there's just like a couple more examples which totally repeat that. H1 not inside this previous one. The H1 was inside a header. This one's just out on its own. So this is the heading for the body of the page. And then, paragraph, apples or fruit. And then a section, H2, H3, H2, H3. So a couple of sections there, right? So apples are fruit. So all of this maybe should be wrapped in one thing because it's kind of like that's all one chunk of content. But it's wrapped in the body. And so if this is the main part of the body, I'd maybe wrap all that in main, right? Or is it an article? Could it stand on its own? Something to think about. All right, so that's fruit, and then we have O5, a course, and so this is just kind of like the outline for a course. Welcome, H2, H3, H2, H3, showing you how the H's work. And then we have one more here, just a sample outline. This is really kind of showing H1s, H2s, H3s, that kind of a deal. But those are all semantic also, though we just have not taken a close look at them yet. Because in the next one, we're going to take a look at HTML H1 through H6. These are known as the headings, so I'll add that in. Headings and a little dash. And then I have a few more examples to illustrate all of the headings. We'll see that next.